And then he realized everything he already had was not right either. And that was why it had happened at all. And that his life with his family was some temporary bandage on a permanent wound.
It's hard to imagine a more unlikable character than Pete Campbell. At the start of the series, Pete is a smug, spoiled weakling. His entitlement and his obnoxious attitude, along with him reeking of desperation, results in pretty much everyone at Sterling Cooper disliking the guy.
You'll die in that corner office, a mid-level executive with a little bit of hair who women go home with out of pity. Want to know why? Because no one will like you.
However, over the course of the show, we start to see a different side of Pete. We see the pain in his soul, and as the series goes on, he gradually lets go of his insecurities and becomes a hard-working and respectable man. Compared to Don or Peggy, Pete is not one of the more glamorous characters. Actor Vincent Kartheiser was never nominated for any awards for his performance, which is an absolute travesty. Because despite not being as flashy or as sexy as the other storylines, Pete's story is one of the deepest and most relatable journeys in the series.
How are you? Not great, Bob.
Pete Campbell is a young account manager at Sterling Cooper. He's from the prestigious Campbell-Dykeman family, which was once one of the richest in New York. Though they have lost a lot of their wealth over time, the name Campbell is still enough to land him a job at Sterling Cooper, and is the only reason they keep him around at first.
Don't fool yourself. There's a Pete Campbell at every agency out there.
Well, let's get one of the other ones.
In the first season, Pete embodies the worst aspects of the Mad Men world. He's full of himself despite accomplishing so little. He feels entitled to everything despite not earning anything on his own. And of course, he sexually harasses every woman around him.
Wouldn't be a sin for us to see your legs. If you pull your waist in a little bit, you might look like a woman.
Is that all, Mr. Draper?
Hey, I'm not done here. I'm working my way up.
Pete aspires to be like Don. Despite being in accounts, he wants to be a creative like him, and he tries to emulate Don's seduction of women. However, unlike Don, who manages to be suave and charming, Pete just comes off as cloying and desperate. People are turned off by Pete, not just because he doesn't look like Don, but because he comes off as way too eager.
He basically said I care too much about my clients and they notice it. How could that be bad?
We eventually learn why Pete is like this. His family always looked down on Pete, seeing him as a failure to live up to their name. Despite providing him with every opportunity, they never gave him the one thing he always wanted: acceptance. This is the permanent wound that he talks about. Growing up this way left Pete with a chip on his shoulder, and he's desperate for validation in any form in order to try and bandage that wound.
Why is it so hard for you people to give me anything?
We gave you everything. We gave you your name. And what have you done with it?
Thus, Pete seeks things to make himself feel important and respected. He has a string of affairs because it makes him feel wanted. He tries to be a writer, not because he's passionate about it, but because he wants Don's approval as a father figure. When Ken gets a story published in The Atlantic, Pete pushes his wife Trudy to sleep with her ex-boyfriend so that he can get published as well, because he craves the external validation that much.
I could have gotten you in the New Yorker, or in the Encyclopedia Britannica if I wanted to.
So, why didn't you?
And it's not just external things like money or success. Pete craves love and acceptance from the people around him, and is continually disappointed that no one gives it to him. When he fights Lane, he's not just hurt from the fight itself. He's hurt because he was hoping that one of his coworkers, whom he's worked with for years, would step in and stand up for him.
What was I supposed to do? Step in? Punch Lane?
Why are we even having a fight at work? This is an office. We're supposed to be friends.
It's one of the reasons he gravitates towards Peggy in the first season. She's young and naive, and he can come to her in his lowest moments, and she accepts him. When she starts to become accepted and loved by everyone else, Pete hates it, not just because she's no longer at his beck and call, but also because she's getting the very thing that he desperately wants.
And every time I walk by, I wonder, are you going to be nice to me? Or cruel?
It's ironic, of course, because Pete does have love and acceptance. He's married to Trudy, who is literally the perfect wife. She genuinely loves Pete, despite all of his flaws, and she's endlessly positive and supportive of him. In fact, I think she's too perfect. Trudy basically has no faults. The most you can say is that she's a little bossy sometimes, but that's it. She's basically the perfect wife, and it makes Pete even more unsympathetic that he had such a perfect home life and didn't even appreciate it until the end of the series.
I have nothing done.
Now, you could say that's intentional. Many of the guys like Dawn in the series don't appreciate their wives or families until it's too late. But other wives like Betty or Megan actually had flaws that made them interesting characters. Trudy is just sweet and perfect and honestly a little flat as a character. Now, I think there are a couple of reasons for this. One is that Matt Weiner based the character on his grandmother and might have been idealizing her to some extent. The other reason is that actress Alison Brie was working on Community at the same time as Mad Men. This meant that she wasn't as available as they might have liked. Maybe if they could have, they would have given Trudy more storylines that would have fleshed her out more. But if Trudy's character had to suffer for the sake of Annie Edison, then that's a trade I'm willing to make.
Abed, what are you doing?
Don Draper from Mad Men. What'd you think?
Weird.
Awesome. Put your tongue in her ear.
I liked it. Don't be him. He cheats on his wife.
That's not to say that Pete has no likable qualities. He's one of the first to recognize new trends, not only in business, but also in the world. Perhaps because of his youth, he's one of the most progressive characters on the show. He's a supporter of JFK and Martin Luther King, and their deaths personally affected him. He genuinely believes in the civil rights movement and actively pushes back on racism.
Did you know we were in the presence of a bona fide racist?
That's the latest thing, isn't it? Everybody's a racist!
Over the course of the show, Pete does grow into a better person. He works hard and becomes one of the most critical parts of Sterling Cooper. He stops acting like a dickhead all the time, and eventually his co-workers do start to like him. And he realizes what he had all along with his family, and is able to work things out and reunite with them. In the series finale, he's finally happy and at peace, moving to a great new job with his wife and daughter by his side.
I want to start over. And I know I can. I'm not so dumb anymore. I'm not ignoring the fact that I could actually lose your love.
However, some fans don't think he deserved that ending. We have to talk about the au pair scene. In the episode Souvenir, Pete meets his neighbor's German au pair, which is essentially a live-in babysitter. Pete replaces a dress that she had stained, and then pressures her into sex to return the favor. Many viewers think that what Pete did to this girl was rape.
I went to a lot of trouble to solve your dress problem. And I think I at least deserve to see it on you.
Now, both Matt Weiner and Vincent Kartheiser have said that the scene was not meant to be interpreted that way. In the script, she was supposed to be more enthusiastic, but they claimed that the actress didn't play it the way that they wanted. However, I find it hard to believe that the scene could be interpreted any other way. Not only does Pete force his way into this girl's room when she already turned him down, she spends the next few days afterwards crying, to the point where Pete's neighbor figures out what's going on. Afterwards, Pete seems ashamed of himself and tells Trudy that he doesn't want to be away from her anymore.
I don't want you to go away anymore without me.
Now, we see all sorts of disgusting behavior from the men on the show, including other examples of sexual assault. It's a part of the social and political era that the show takes place in, but I don't think that was an intended part of Pete's story. Sure, he's a pushy, creepy guy at the beginning of the series, but he's not meant to be a villain. I think this was an example of a script that just didn't translate well when filmed, but it's interesting given Matt Weiner's own experiences that he doesn't understand why people feel the way they do about the scene.
The allegation is not true. and that this is a very important topic, and a topic that I have devoted, that has been an obsession of mine in my work and in my life.
But setting that aside, Pete is one of the most underappreciated characters, both within the narrative and by the fandom. He's not sexy like Dawn, or aspiring like Peggy. He doesn't come across as tortured and sympathetic, but instead whiny and pathetic. But this is exactly what makes him such a relatable character. He's not masked by a facade of charisma the way that Dawn is. He's just a normal guy, desperate for acceptance in a world that isn't giving it to him. He's like Leonard in the final episode, and if we're honest with ourselves, it's a lot closer to how most of us feel compared to someone like Dawn.
Sometimes I think maybe I died, and I'm in some kind of, I don't know if it's heaven or hell or limbo, but I don't seem to exist. No one feels my existence.
Just cash the checks. You're gonna die one day.